If you and other teammates are being chased by a bear, how fast do you have to be? That's not a trick question. The reason I'm asking is because there is a real answer. And the real answer is you just have to be faster than the slowest person. That's if you don't want to be eaten by the bear. And I feel like a lot of times in business, people are aiming just not to be eaten by the bear, not to go out of business. When really, what we're going to focus on today is the blue sky approach of business. So we want to be focusing on how can we create our true North Star in business. And that doesn't mean that we're doing the bare minimum to get by. It's knowing what direction we want to head and what it is that we want to do in our business. And to give you an example of this, if you are in a car and you are going the wrong direction, if you go faster in that direction, are you going to get there? No, you're absolutely not. You're just going to get faster to the wrong place. So that's why in business, we need to know our true North Star. So welcome along today. We are going to be talking about designing an exercise business that works with clarity, capacity, and sustainable growth. I'm your host today, Dr. Suz Baxter, and I'm bringing you this presentation today as a sort of mini insight, mini workshop into how we can really develop our business into the best that it can be and know what direction that we want to go. My recommendation would be to do this or something similar about every 3 months in your business. And the reason being is when we're reassessing every 3 months, it means that we can make sure that we're still headed in the right direction, not just faster in the wrong direction that we talked about. But on top of that, we can make sure that the destination is still where we want to go to before it's too late. Now, that said, let's have a little bit of a think about the things that we're going to need for today's session. We're going to be taking about 90 minutes to go through everything, if we can cram it in. 90 minutes to go through how we can make sure that the business that we have or the business that we want to develop is exactly the one that we're into. And what you will need is I've created a workbook, or rather, I've created the questions for the workbook and my staff member has put together it as a lovely booklet. You can get this in the comments today. We'll provide that link for you. And we'll be providing some times in the session today that you can go through and write down what applies to your business and what you want to work on in your business. The reason being, I find it's all very well getting inspired by sessions, and that's assuming that you want to be inspired by the session with me today. But that doesn't really translate often to things that we can practically do and use in our business. So that said, that's why I created the workbook, so that we can make sure that this provides some practical implication steps for us to use in our business. Now, what I am going to do as we talk through some of the things that we might want to highlight and look at in business today, I hope it's all right with you that I share with you some of the mistakes that I made in business. Not because I want to make this all about me, but instead because I feel like, but it's really hard sometimes to know how that might apply to us in our industry, in our business. So hence why I will give you some of the things that I found happened to me, and you can see whether it draws a parallel to some of the situations that you might have got into. And I will say, as someone who has been in business in the fitness industry a very long time, I ran multiple locations and I moved from New Zealand then to Australia. And so I started again from scratch. And I found myself as someone who was running a successful business and then restarting again when I moved to Australia. I actually found myself making some of the same mistakes that I had previously made a second time. Now, I guess that's all right, because the first time you make it, it's a little bit of a mistake. And then the second time, you're starting to learn. But the third time, it's a choice. So thankfully, I haven't done it 3 times yet, but hopefully you'll be able to learn from my mistakes. What we also will be doing today is making sure that we're looking at a blue skies approach to how we're addressing business. And within that, we want to look at how can we think about our business for working on it as opposed to in it. So I think of this more as a bird's eye approach when we're in that sky, looking down and seeing some of the patterns that are emerging in business and how we can address those. because when we see where some of our failures are and where some of the patterns are, we can save ourselves a lot of time and effort, and the money that we potentially lose when we haven't addressed these things, we can stop the leak from getting worse. Now, the reframe that we want to think about is we're actually in an industry which is very much like a passion industry. And what I mean by that is, if you hate fitness, you probably are not in the fitness industry, okay? So we are a self-selected, biased group of individuals, and we generally tend to be quite motivated. That's what exercise does for us. That's what we love giving to our clients, that there's all of these extra benefits for their life. But the thing is that we often find ourselves in a bit of an issue when it comes to the amount of time that it takes in our business. So we can often find, because we put so much effort into our clients, okay, put effort into the clients, we think that because we're putting that much effort into the clients, we erroneously think that putting a lot of time into running our business, that's working on our business, means that we care more, and that's just a price of business. But that is a false assumption. So let me say that again. If you're spending a lot of time and effort with your clients, that's working in your business, and then you're also spending a lot of time working on the business in terms of inefficient systems, our brain can subconsciously think that the harder that we work on something that shouldn't take as long, which is, following up text messages, etc., that translates to how much we care about business. And that's absolutely not the case. And we're going to see that today. We're going to go through some of those things. So what I'm saying is, it tends to be that it's not an effort problem when we come to our 3-month check-in that we're doing right now. It can be a design problem often. So that's if we feel overwhelmed, constantly busy, or that we're always catching up with trying to get back to clients. This can happen quite a lot in the solopreneur world, because we'll find that we've just finished taking a session, we have a gap that was supposed to be 15 minutes to have a quick snack, maybe go to the bathroom, but now you've had a few people that would like to cancel or rearrange their session, and instead of doing the things that fit our oxygen mask first, which would be eating and going to the bathroom between back-to-back sessions, now we find that we're actually addressing these things, such as the person that's trying to cancel or change around their session. And that means that we're constantly on the back foot there. And so sometimes these things that come up for us are actually things that we can build into the design so that they do not become as much of an issue, and we can find that we have more time for ourselves to fit that oxygen mask. So overview today is we're not focusing on marketing hacks, although I will give you some of my secret sauce today. So there will be some marketing hacks, but that's not the focus of today. I hope that's the deal. It's also not scale at all costs. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about that in a second. But it is, yes, to better structure. What I mean by not scaling at all costs is, whilst we've got some ways that we can scale our business, and I'm not going to assume that you know what scaling means. A lot of people throw out this term. Scaling is simply a way that for each unit of time, we can provide more services, okay? So some ways that we can scale are, if we are spending 2 hours on doing administration, if we now get a full-time admin person in, now we've scaled you to the things that you bring in for the business, such as training clients per unit of time. You can spend that time dedicated to the clients, and now that admin person can handle it. So one of the ways that we can scale is staff. Another way we can scale is technology, which is something that we're going to go into today. But I have found that when it comes to talking about scaling, as someone myself who's been in the industry 20 years, okay, I'm aging myself a little bit, and I've done a lot of educational courses, okay, and a lot of the educational courses that you do are within the industry. And I also looked outside of the industry for certain things that I thought could try to innovate us. So things that maybe we haven't started using in the industry yet. And we will talk about some similar industries that we may be able to take some inspiration from later on in today's session. But when I signed up for some business coaching courses, of which there was 2 which I made a mistake, I found particularly, first of all, they were very expensive. I want you to think a number in your head of how expensive a business course might be. Most people on the workshop that I've just run with similar content to today will guess that I spent around $1,000. We're talking I spent around $20,000, $15,000 on some of these courses for an entire year, but that's how much I spent on it. So I obviously expected quite a lot from these courses. And what I learned was not what I expected. And what I expected was when you sit in a room with people that are working in a more advanced way than where you are in your business right now. And usually one of the measures of that is your income. So I was seated in a room with people whose businesses were worth multi-millions of dollars, but they were in different industries. And in that room, what I realized was all of the techniques that were being taught were actually that of people who ran transactional businesses. Transactional businesses are businesses where we're talking about how do we give people less and we charge more and we take less time to do it at all costs. That's the scaling at all costs. And a transactional business is very different to what someone who's been quite successful, has found to work in the fitness industry. The opposite that I've found to the techniques that they were talking about for their transactional business is a relationship business. And I would say that a lot of the techniques that I'm talking about today are based on a relationship business that we build as a result of working in the fitness industry, with a focus on studios and personal trainers and how we can grow and how we can assess and design our businesses so that we can reach more people and we can get them better results. So the type of advice I'm going to give you today is really focused on that relationship business. I'm okay if you're someone who is a transactional business, but this is just the way that I find to be most successful. And it is in that regard that you're going to find a lot of the things that I suggest for you to do are quite at odds with maybe what you've found business coaches and business courses to say, because usually they're focused on transactional businesses where you've got scripts for how to trick people into saying yes to train with you, which to me brings about a less motivated client, a less warm lead, if you will. The types of people that get into your business when there's someone who's being tricked through fancy techniques or scripts tends to be someone who's not as warm or as interested in what you're providing and how different it is to what other people provide in the industry. That's just my take. One of the biggest industry traps that we have right now is because we live in an internet world, we can see a whole bunch of things online. And so therefore, if we went on a course with someone, they could be saying, oh, I'm opening my second or third location. I'm hiring someone. I'm launching an app. And what we start doing is assuming that that's exactly what we should do next. But unfortunately, it probably isn't. You're seeing their structure and their margins or their systems, but copying them without context means that it might not be the right thing for you to do, and especially for your business. So that said, I want us to come to the first part of the little booklet that you have, which is called Section 1, the reality check. And in this, we've got what feels hard, a clarity audit for rating yourself on your offer, your schedule, your financial, what you actually earn, your client journey, and your roles, friction mapping, and we're categorizing that. So I am going to give you some time to fill that in, and we'll pause in a second. But before that, I'm going to give you some ideas for things that might feel hard in your business. So the outcome of today is we want to make sure that the core outcome is that we're getting more clarity, more simplicity, and more sustainability in the business. And that's because personally, I want us to be in the business a long time. I want us to have the option to stay on 20, 40, 50 years, whatever your goal is, 100 years if we're going to live that long. I want you to have the choice that you can stick around and keep reinventing the direction that you want to go because you have the tools to do it. And through that, and through today, we're creating more clarity, less unnecessary complexity, and a business that you can actually sustain. And that's not just financially. Financially is not a dirty word, but it's also physically and mentally too. So that said, I'm going to give you some examples of things that you might find hard in your business before I allow you the opportunity to press pause on the video. And that way you can think about the things in your business that do feel hard. What we might find is in doing this exercise, because now we're looking at a bird's eye view, what's happening on our business day to day versus working in the business. What we might find is that I'm planting a seed that maybe later on today, maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks' time, you're in the middle of doing something in your business and you suddenly realize, you know what? This is something that is hard. This is something that I need to work on, and I need to set as my North Star as something to change over time. Okay? And at that point, you'll get to think of me. How nice would that be? You get to think of this session together, and you'll get to pull out your workbook and you'll be able to write down that item. Okay? So turning to that section right now in the workbook, let's have some examples. So some of the things that might feel harder in your business than you think they should, or some friction that you have, and you don't have to fill them in chronologically. Some of the examples that you might have and you might find is it might be finding staff is really hard right now, especially if you've got a studio. You might find that technology is really hard. Like on average, most of the people I was talking to that have technology employed in their business, it turns out that they actually have on average, 4 tools to run their business. We're talking about for bookings, for customer relationship management systems, for the CRM, some for managing the gym, as well as for managing the check-ins for classes, as well as the PT sessions, as well as managing calendars, and a separate one for payroll. So there were people that had more than that. There were people that had 6. But if that currently is something that you haven't reevaluated, please write that down as technology, something that is feeling a bit harder in the business, because after all, these technology systems, they are totally scalable on their end, but could be taking a lot of your bottom line on your end. Another one could be education. You might feel like you're a little bit behind the ball in terms of the education that you provide for your staff. Or it might just be that you feel as though there are some extra tools that you want in your toolkit. So that could be, do you want to do some extra work on your business? Maybe you want to learn a bit extra about pre and postpartum care, or maybe specialize in seniors or injuries. Write down education if that's one of those things that you feel like you could work on that feels hard. Maybe it's the constraints of your business. Are there any constraints that are going on, such as time of day that the gym opens at, or times that you're actually able to take sessions because of when classes are on, for example? Things that can be changed or adapted. Think about those things. Some of the things that I would write down personally from having a studio in the friction mapping section is there are times when people walk in with animal poo on their shoe. So our studio used to have, in Australia, possums are protected. Like in New Zealand, they are not protected. But possums were outside, and they would always have possum poo all over underneath the trees where people would be walking in. And so therefore clients would have animal poop on their shoe and walk it into the squares in the gym. And that sounds disgusting, but the thing is, if you're someone who's taking a session and you've got 3 people that are currently needing you to show your expertise and experience and lead them and instruct them, and you're pulling out a 1-by-1 gym mat to hose it down at the same time as taking the session, that's something that can get quite tedious. So I'd always said to myself, if in the future I was going to have another studio again, I would just make it that you had to wear those slip resistant socks and you wouldn't train in shoes. Or just like those things at the airport that you walk through that clean your shoes. That would be something that I did. Now, if you're ready, go ahead and press pause on this video right now, and you can start writing those things out. Maybe you've been writing out as we're going, in which case you don't need to pause. And then come back right now. And now let's talk about how we can address some of those points that might have come up. So for staff, if you're having an issue getting great staff to your place, the thing that tends to be working now, again, I'm going to give you my secret sauce, is you have to think about not just putting the word out that you're after staff. You also have to be the sort of place that staff want to work at. And that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily make your gym look pretty or anything like that, although if you don't think it looks pretty, you probably should. It's things such as what makes you a place that someone wants to work. And that could be where you create a bit of a campaign on your website where you say, we mentor our staff. Only if you do. We mentor our staff, or we do staff outings, or what are the things that uniquely make your business the one that people would want to work for compared to another one up the road. On top of that, it could be that you shoulder tap some people that are really great members in your gym that you think would just be really great staff members. Even if they say no, they're probably really flattered that you think that they are at that level. So that's one that could help you with the staff. Technology-wise, if you haven't done that audit recently, some of the things that we could address with the technology is sitting down with some of the new carriers out there and finding out whether there's one tool that could replace quite a lot of the tools that you have. For example, you can look at a more local Australian brand called Groovio, Groovio. They've got the ability that you can handle your gym management, booking one-on-one sessions, booking workshop sessions where there's a series of weeks, and also big group fitness classes, as well as has areas for notes for the programs for the classes, so that you could set a running program over 6 weeks, for example. So these are some ideas, not sponsored, but it's worth spending a little bit of time on a call, having a little bit of a conversation about the tools that you could specifically change to. Within technology changes so fast. That's number one. But number two, if a carrier or service provider actually wants you using their technology, oftentimes they will migrate you across free of charge. They will do that work for you to get you onto the platform. So you don't have to be concerned that this is going to take up a whole bunch of time. It's just about, do you find the system easy to use? And one of the things that I liked about one of the tools that I've been using is it had a nice dashboard about what the income was from each member, how many on average sessions that people were doing. So it meant it was all in one place instead of buried in a menu. Another idea with the technology is, specifically if you're using a few different tools, there are regional specific prices for certain technology tools. So if it's an American brand and it's priced in American dollars, the earning capacity is larger in the USA. Whereas in other countries, you'll find that the amount when it's translated into the local currency and with purchasing power factored in, it's not the same equivalence of what they're charging in the country that the technology was designed in. So it is worth the ask. It isn't going to cost you anything to ask the person and say, look, is there a regional specific pricing? Not because I want to pay in my own currency, although that's nice with fluctuating currency rates, but also because you'll find that if you take into account purchasing power, which a lot of big companies do, Wix does, for example, so does Audible, you'll find that actually the rate that you have to pay is lower as well if they do have regional pricing. So worth an ask. Another one can be taxes. If you haven't got your taxes sorted, it could be worth placing on that list that you want to start reading Profit First, which is where you've got a series of bank accounts. Maybe you've got a bank account that's specifically for your tax, and within that you're putting the money into your tax each time. You've got another bank account that's specifically for GST, and you're organizing that from the second you get paid. Now there's a lot of strategies you can go into there, but this is about writing out some of the things that currently are deal breakers for you that you know you're just going to have to fix. I'll give you a common one that came up across each of the workshops that I held, and that is people feel really awkward about their cancellation policy. Okay, let's take a step back from that to begin with. Cancellation policy. Most people have it. Okay. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about today is not just about do you have it or do you know about this? It's do you know about it, but also are you actually taking action on it? Because there's a gap right here between the knowledge of it and implementing it. Okay, so you may be aware about your cancellation policy, but are you aware about actually enforcing it? And that's why I have some of my own secret sauce for how I found that it helps to enforce a cancellation policy. When I asked who is enforcing the cancellation policy, I found in the room that there was over 70% of people were not enforcing, that's of who wants to admit it, were not enforcing their cancellation policy. Now there's a few things that I want to flag about that. If you have a cancellation policy that someone has signed as an agreement, okay, and then in action, you're not enforcing that policy, that means that because your actions do not match the contract, if in the future you wanted to enforce the policy because it is your policy, legally you don't have a leg to stand on. So if you were in court and it came up, the evidence was this is what's on my contract and I've enforced the policy, and previously you've not enforced the policy, that's not legal for you to go back and say the person needs to pay the cancellation policy, because in practice you have not enforced it. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you might as well not have a cancellation policy if you're not actually enforcing it. Okay, just so you know how important this is. Here is the secret sauce, and I know you want to hear this, about how we can handle this conversation, because most people don't handle it well, or they don't handle it in a way that they feel comfortable doing. The main one is we find that when someone tries to message us to cancel because of whatever reason, we are so busy doing other things and we feel a need to get back to the person so fast that it tends to be we go, that's fine, see you next week. Okay, we think that we've said, yeah, we've acknowledged it and we'll see you next week. What the person hears is, oh, it doesn't matter, they're too busy, they didn't care about me canceling. So the next week when they go to cancel again, they think that it's not a big deal. Now, the repercussions of this is we don't have somebody who thinks that we care about that about that policy, but also about the accountability that we're providing. And that's a problem, because the whole point is we want the person to do the session. But if they're not doing the session and then they think the next week, oh, I could make it, but it's going to be a bit of a push, it would be easier to cancel it, they will cancel it. Okay, do you see what I'm saying? The fact that you've allowed them away with the cancellation the week before and haven't fully acknowledged it and haven't fully enforced your cancellation policy means the following week, if it is difficult to get in, it's easier for them to cancel. Okay, that's not what we want. We literally want the person to exercise. Okay, so first of all, that's our obligation, and that is something that we ourselves take on board when we are trainers. Okay, first bit. Second bit, we need to handle this better. We need to handle the fact that the person has gone to cancel. How do we do that? And this is my system. Okay, what I do is I put on my Sandra hat. And my Sandra hat, when I put it on, means I narrate what is happening in real time. I do not assume that the person knows what's going on in my head, even though they've signed that cancellation policy, okay? Even though they signed the cancellation policy, it does not matter. You have to bring up the cancellation policy, okay? But we don't need to be a jerk about it. When we put the Sandra hat on, we say, sorry to hear you can't make the session today. Acknowledge it. As you know, it's a 24-hour or 48, whatever yours is. It's a 24-hour cancellation policy. It's currently 3 hours before your session, which means the cancellation policy does apply. Okay, from there, you can say on this occasion, as a courtesy, I will waive it, but I cannot do this again. Or you can say, I will have to charge you for this session. Okay, and then you can say, it's a shame that you missed the session because I was really looking forward to putting you through some core whatever. I will see you next week at this time. Okay. Why do we do this? Legally, we are referencing that cancellation policy. Motivationally, we are also referencing that we're holding the person accountable. Okay. And the whole thing is, we could have fit someone else into that session. Okay. So financially, the reason that we need to do this is because you need to still be around next year. You're not going to be able to be around next year if everybody is canceling and you're not following through with that cancellation policy. Okay. So we're putting on that Sandra hat and we're narrating in real time what happens. Let me tell you, you will only probably have to do that twice before you find out that your clients become trained and they literally say to you, I've transferred the cancellation amount. I will see you next week. And then you don't even have to have that awkward conversation anymore. And so that's my secret sauce. Let me know how you get on with doing that one. But I will say it's very effective and it's fair on all parties for financial, motivation, and legal reasons. Okay? Hope you enjoyed that one. All right, so we've already seen in the interactive part, we've already talked about our friction mapping. I hope you've gone through and categorized whether it's client friction, such as confusion and drop-off, operator friction, or financial friction. And we're thinking about, from all angles, our offer, our roles, our client journey, our financial, and our schedule here when it comes to what's hard and friction mapping. Now, in our reality check that we're doing here, this is easily going into our section 2, which is our current week snapshot. Okay, so that in mind, let's first talk about our clarity stack. So clarity isn't just one thing, it's layered. We need clarity in what we sell and when we deliver it, what we earn, what happens to clients, and who does what, or what does what if technology is scaling for you for booking, for example. Okay, what we sell. We need to think about the things in our business that we currently sell, what we actually do. When we deliver it is to do with scheduling, because you might find that someone needs to reschedule, you can't fit them in the time that they're actually able to do. So you say, oh, I will do 9 p.m. on a Monday, even though you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. The problem is the next time that person asks for this exact same treatment, now you have to say to them why it was okay then, but it's not okay now. So thinking about how we create an environment where we can continue with the choices that we've made. And if we put on our Sandra hat when we said that, we could have said, the time that you've selected is a super busy time. This is why we like to get people booked in really early in the week. And as a one-off courtesy, I will be able to fit you in at this time, but I will not be able to do it again. Again, Sandra hat really works for that. Clarity stack is also what you actually earn, and that's thinking about our revenue as well as what our profit actually is. And when I think about what is actually earned, I just want to flag that occasionally that you will find that you provide services that might work in with other expenses that you have, okay? What I mean by that is if you work for a big box gym, you're paying rent, you might find that because you're taking 2 classes a week, that you actually get a rent reduction as a result of that. Not just the pay that you get, but you also get a rent reduction. This happened to me in a big box gym myself. I realized that I was already taking 2 classes permanently, but I never thought to ask, hey, is there anything that I would need to do, or was there anything that gets someone to a point that they're on rent reduction? If I'd asked that question sooner, I could have saved myself some money, because you approximately can get a rebate each week of about $100 at the place I was training. So it was a massive amount. And if I'd asked sooner, that money could have been in my back pocket or being reinvested into the business. So it's one I learned, but I'm hoping it's one that you don't find out the hard way like I did. Clarity also for what happens to clients. And this is talking about our client journey. So not just what happens when they show up each week, but we're talking about from the first contact, what does that look like for a client? And also funneling the client into, do they have to book in their first session? Do they have to book in all their sessions? Will at any point you be booking people into sessions if you've got a booking system? I've got a little story on that one actually. And we'll talk about how things just require you to understand your clients a little bit better. And the story is I implemented a booking system for my clients. I didn't have one before, and I finally decided that the one day I had off a week, Sunday, was really not the time to just be double checking my schedule for the week, because people would wait until a Sunday to get back to me or to tell me they needed to change sessions. And then therefore that whole day was just waiting for people to get back to me, which was horrendous. And when I finally got that booking system, I had to have a long weekend, which usually I would work, but this time I was working on getting the scheduling system up and running. And it took literally non-stop 3 days of inputting all of the client's information and sending them links for them to input their financial information and download the app, etc. But I had 2 people that flat out refused to use the booking system. And the craziest thing was when I approached them to talk about it, they said that they wouldn't book in, and no, they would stop being a member if they had to book in. And I was like, well, it's been really nice training you. We've been training together for 4 years. That's lovely. I would love to keep training you, but I'm sorry, that's what everybody has to do. And also, anywhere else that you go to, you're going to have to book in. So it's either with me or with someone else, but it's all right. Bye. See you later. It's been nice knowing you. They came back immediately. It turns out what they were worried about was that other people would be getting booked in. As in, they thought if there was any unfairness that was going on, any special treatment, they wanted it to be them. And the special treatment would be that other people were booking in, were getting booked in before everybody else when sessions opened, etc. So when I assured them, I'm sorry, everybody has to book in, and also I'm not going to give you any special treatment, that was all they needed to hear. It was crazy. So that's about setting boundaries and thinking about having that open and honest conversation with your client too, because sometimes they themselves, they don't actually know what it is that they don't like, besides that things are changing, you know? So that said, let's move on to section 2 in our workbook. And that's where we're talking about capacity and weekly structure. And here's where I want you to write down, regardless of whether you're a studio owner, a group fitness instructor, or PT, write down currently what your week snapshot looks like, 2.1, what your ideal week design would be if you could choose it, and your capacity reality, and any scheduling frictions that you have, okay? Whether there's split shifts, large gaps in the day, inconsistent schedule, or last minute bookings. And you may think that this is a no-brainer, but the ideal week design, when it comes to people who want to be powerlifter, for example, you don't find many powerlifters doing their best performance at 5 o'clock in the morning, okay? Most of my powerlifting clients that I work with that are powerlifting trainers, they start their day at like 5 p.m. Then they work to midnight. So this is a really useful exercise to do. Also think about how much time you spend on admin too, because that's something that really chews up your time, that technically does not provide direct monetary result. It's part of it, but it doesn't provide the direct monetary result. And any capacity reality that you have, because like we said before, people think that their business is complex and that means that they're doing well. But the thing is, the more simple that your business is, the more successful it can be. And I need to tell you one of the mistakes I made. Okay, I'm so pleased that I can share this with you. I thought twice this happened to me. I thought the more sessions, the growth phase that I'm in, the better. I thought that that meant that I was doing really well, really successful. The thing was, I was mistaken, okay? When you have over 104 sessions a week, I'm not kidding, it turns out you have to have systems for yourself to streamline everything. So yes, I had to get really clear on my business and have really streamlined systems that I created. But you also have to create a system for when you drink water. Like, you can't go to the bathroom whenever you want. You have to be able to go to the bathroom when you actually have a break, okay? That's when you have back-to-back clients. You also find that you need to be really clear on certain policies and procedures that you're bringing in. But the thing is, I thought that each time, more sessions, the busier you are, the more successful PT you are. And that's only one measure of success if you're looking at the amount of pay you're getting as a measure of success. But actually, outside of that, I couldn't really go and see friends to have dinner because the next day I'd have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And by the time I'd finished sessions the night before at 7:45, it's a pretty late dinner time, but a couple of hours at dinner, driving to and from the place, finishing up from work, and then getting to work the next day, that fatigue would roll on to subsequent days. So literally I was just living to work at that point, which is not what you should be doing with your business, okay? And there are things that you find out when you're creating your, not just your schedule, but your customer journey, etc. You find that in complexity and clarity as well, that you, as a person, your energy changes by how stressed you are, but also whether you can recover from the amount of workload that you have on. And one of those things that you may notice is, I don't know about you, okay, but me, I'm not exactly known for having an amazing, like, I'm not super funny. I'm not a comedian. I've got a sense of humor, but it's just I'm not usually the one delivering the punchlines, okay? So the thing is, when I have that fatigue that I'm bringing into client sessions, I don't actually have any level of humor. And so I'm not as fun to be around. And it's a big drop. It's a significant drop. If you didn't have that much, funniness to begin with, then, and you lose it, it's like, that's very noticeable. So there are things that go into how much energy you have in your capacity and your week structure that are not simply like, I have this number of hours in the day. People have families outside of that. And you also need to think about, if you have kids, do you want to be finishing at 2 o'clock so you can go and pick them up from school? Or do you want to be taking a more of a hybrid approach to work where you've got some of it happening online? That's where we design it in our section 2, capacity and weekly structure. So make sure to pause the video if you haven't really got that written down just yet. Okay? And moving on and talking about that, if there is a big discrepancy between how many hours you'd like to work versus how many hours you are working in either direction, this is where we can workshop it a little bit. Because, for example, if you just don't quite have enough clients right now, I'm going to set you a challenge. I will bet that you haven't done this yet. Go into your phone, into your contacts, and go to every person in the area and message them and say, hey, I haven't actually properly gone in and told you about what I currently do in the area, and I'd love to get you down and show you, okay? The reason that you want to do that is because you'd be surprised at how many people that are currently sitting there that maybe they want personal training or they want to go to a group fitness class or a new gym, but then they would feel awkward not going to your gym. They also would feel awkward reaching out to you because you haven't made the first contact. This is literally your job. So give people the opportunity to know what you do. And if it's not for them, like you've reached out to them, those people, by reciprocity, will probably be able to talk about it with people in the workplace to say, hey, you were looking for a gym. I actually have a friend that reached out to me the other day. They've fully set up their business. They've been doing this a while. They've always been into it, or they've just recently lost 50 kilos and they're super motivated to help other people, etc. So this is your opportunity, if you don't quite have the right amount of clients, to reach out to people that are your ideal client. And think about inviting them so that they don't feel awkward if in the future, even if not now, they potentially want to do a session. Okay? So that's your challenge. If you currently have too many clients and that's the issue that you have on your list, it's a great problem to have, people think, but also at the same time, it's super awkward. We have, later on in this session, scaling systems that you can use. So let's make sure that you hang in there for that. All right. Now that we've written down those things, and especially if you've got split shifts going on, because you do have to pick a lane, whether you want to do just mornings, just evenings, or maybe do one morning, one day, evenings, another day. This is where we're steering our true North Star to. In going back to friction that we have within scheduling and in our reality check, let's think about the friction model that's there. So currently you might have some client friction, so some unclear pricing and some unclear next steps. I will guarantee you, for your capacity and week structure and for your reality check, a lot of people out there that offer PT sessions, that also offer small group sessions, are not actually communicating that with a client that maybe reached out to them for one-on-one training. And it doesn't have to be a formal sit down conversation. It can be, hey, do you know that I do one-on-one training, but I also do this other thing? I would say that you can keep people in your wheelhouse, in your funnel for longer if people have the idea that, okay, things are getting tough, we all have to tighten our belts. I know that this person has group training. If you've never mentioned that to your client, when the client can't continue doing whatever it is that they do with you, they will leave because they think that's all you can do. Okay, so make sure, even in passing conversation, that you just let them know other things that you do. And you don't have to say it's because, oh, if your budget ever didn't allow you to do this, you could do the other one. You can say, oh, I had a really good session today. I took a group session with these people, or point out it's something else that you do just for a change, or if it's coming up to school holidays and they want to be able to do some group sessions with their friends. Also, in the friction model, there can sometimes be some unclear next steps. Now, we are going to map out our customer journey later on in our prescription-based selling. If clients don't know what the next step is for them when they are starting to train with you, or what other options they have when it comes to focus on the sessions. Maybe they think that at the moment you're just taking them for a little bit of an energy expenditure. Let them know that you also train people for certain events, or you also train people for particular purposes. This is about you giving people a bit of a heads up to the other things that are in your wheelhouse. Now, there's operator friction that can happen. And when we talked about scaling before, do you remember the things that we mentioned about scaling? We can scale with staff and we can scale with technology. This is how we can use 1 unit of our time in a better way. We can maybe get more done, okay? Another way we can scale is we can use content. Have you used content to scale before? Using content to scale is super easy. It gives you an opportunity to write something for social media, and it also provides a really good asset for new clients coming in. How cool is that? Okay, so what do I mean by that? I mean that you might find that a client, for bodybuilders, say, a client constantly on a new meal plan is always asking you, when it says 30 grams of dry oats, why do I have to eat dry oats? And you're like, no, that's just the weight. It has to be dry weight and it has to be 30 grams. You don't have to eat it dry, okay? But you might notice that that's something that comes up for a lot of your clients. Now, if you create a question and answer section that you can give to clients when they sign up, or that you can create on your social media, you now have provided them with extra value and you don't have to repeat yourself as much. How good is that? Okay, so that's some friction that you can overcome by doing something like that. So do write some ideas down if anything's coming to you in your workbook for things that you could work on to just give your head a little bit of peace in your business. We already discussed about operator friction with too many tools, and that is your technology. You've got too many tools for technology. Maybe you want to reduce those, and maybe you want to see whether there's regional specific pricing. And in financial friction, underpricing and unused time. That's another one. If you have any of those issues, it's not a small issue. If you don't remove it, it actually compounds, okay? And compounding is scary because it means that over time, you have an issue that continues to get bigger and bigger in bigger magnitudes, okay? If you got 1% better every day, in 70 days, you'd be 100% better. That's how compounding works, okay? So, all right, so we've already done our interaction friction mapping. If you haven't done that, make sure that you filled in section 1 and now section 2, and head back and write down anything that's come up now that you think, I need to work on this. Is this something that I could put in a system that Suz has just discussed? Or is it something that I need to work on, to really simmer on and think about how I can get better? Okay. Let's move on and talk about service design. And in our service design, it's the perfect time to talk about our capacity. We have previously discussed about just because you've got a certain number of hours does not mean you have that amount of capacity. Your capacity model is time, energy, and quality, okay? And the reason I bring this up as we come to service design is because there are certain services that we provide that actually drain us, or they take up an inordinate amount of time compared to the amount of money that we get paid. And that's why we need to constantly reevaluate these things. In capacity, being busy does not mean we're effective, and we can be fully booked and still under earning, overworked, and delivering worse sessions, which is not the sort of service that we want to provide for clients. Let me say that again. Delivering worse sessions is not the sort of service we want to be providing for our client. The reason I'm emphasizing this is because all of the things that we're discussing today are important in the sense of it's a given to have a really, really good product, okay? And that's something that we need to work on to make it really top class, world class, right? But if the systems that we've created around the product that we're delivering are actually affecting the quality of that session, we need to go back and protect the energy of that session, okay? Being busy is not our goal. Being effective is our goal. Okay, we've got a little activity for us to do now. And the activity that we should do is thinking about who our ideal client is in our service design, okay? So before we write down who the current services that we are, I want you to write down who your ideal client is that you have. Not just what it is that you provide for that person that they really like, but also what is it that you do that is so good that no one else can do at all, okay? This is how we help to hone in, focusing on what our product is and what it truly delivers. Thinking about our ideal client, we don't get better and a better business by designing a product that's perfect for somebody who's not a perfect client. We need to reverse engineer and be the sort of service delivery that our ideal client wants to buy services of. So let's say that again. We want to be the sort of person that attracts our ideal client. And through that, we've got to think about what we do that no one else can. Let's have a little bit of an exercise on that now. Okay? There's 2 books I want to tell you about. And the first one is, if you like books, you don't have to read them because I'm going to give you an overview. The first one is Unreasonable Hospitality. Okay? This book, I'll give you the backstory. It's pretty much about being a nepo baby of restaurants. Okay? The guy that wrote the book, he's talking about his journey where he's like 3rd generation restaurateur, and he really wants his restaurant to have Michelin star and be listed on the top 50 restaurants in the entire world. And when they applied, they got invited to the event, and he was like number 50. He was right down at the bottom. Most people would be like, good job, that's, top in the world. He instead was like, wait, I want to be number 1. What can I do differently? And him and his team went to all of these restaurants that are out there, all of the competitors that are out there, and they looked at what these people were doing. I know what you're going to think. You're going to think that I said he went and copied what they did. He spied on them. No, that is not the case. What he did was he said, okay, so they've got that baseline for what we already know, service, etc. But what is it that isn't really their thing, that they're just not really focusing on, okay? And one of the things that he noticed that they didn't focus on in fine dining was coffee and beer, okay? If you're super into beer, but you go to a fine dining restaurant, they often only had 2 beers or 1 available, okay? But if you're super into beer, you wouldn't think that this is a restaurant that's very welcoming for you. On the other hand, same thing with coffee. If you're super into coffee and you see that it's just filtered coffee, black or white, then you will say, okay, like, it wasn't my favorite for the coffee, okay? But what he thought was, why don't we take these things that they obviously think are not part of their brand, that we're actually quite passionate about, beer and coffee, and why don't we excel in those things that we think are our thing? And so what they did was they created a full connoisseur around the beer, a full menu that matched the beer to the food. And equally with the coffee, they got super into the coffee, about like brewing temperature, etc. Think about how you might visit other competitors in the space to be inspired, where you go, you know what, this is cool, but it's not how I do it. How I do it is like this, and that's what makes it uniquely me, and I'm going to double down on that. Or maybe you think when you go to it sort of rubs you up the wrong way when you go to a place where they don't pay attention to something that you think is really important. For example, you go to a place and they're really super into telling people that come in that they'll lose weight in no time. I had clients that I could see when they said that they wanted to lose weight, that they didn't really look like what they were saying aligned with their actual expressions. And I said to them, honestly, I don't care if you don't want to lose weight, because my job is to get you fitter, and someone who is the correct weight but unfit is actually at a health disadvantage compared to someone who is on paper overweight but are fit. So it's my goal to get you fit. And they breathed a sigh of relief and they said, that's great, because I actually have been told all my life to lose weight and I'm sick of hearing it, and I don't want to lose weight. Like, they did lose weight as a result of taking part in the exercise, but it's like they didn't want that to be their goal. So that was something that could be focused on. Now, I did say 2 books, if you were listening. And the second one I want to tell you about is Uncommon Service, okay? And in Uncommon Service, the book, it poses the question, what is it that you have to be bad at? What categories do you have to be bad at in your business to be the best at something else? Now, I'm sure you're thinking, what does that mean? I have no idea what you're talking about, Suz. That's where you have to be bad at something that would stop you from being at the best at something else. So the example is, if you are going to be the best in the area for postpartum care, then potentially, if mums are coming along with their children, their baby that they just had, during a session, one of the children might dirty their nappy, and therefore the session has to be paused while the person goes and changes the nappy and comes back again. And so most people that want to be punctual would cut the session short but on time in order to get to the next person. But if you're going to be the best in class for postpartum care, you might acknowledge that this is going to be part of the process, and instead you make a nice waiting area, and everybody knows that, hey, things might run behind because actually we're trying to get you the best experience that we can get you. And so think about some other things in your business that you might have to not be the best at in order to be the best at other things. Have a think about that and write down if there's anything that comes to mind, and that can just be in the margin at section 3, anything that comes to mind that you have to be bad at to be the best for your North Star in your business, okay? We're coming into our business design now, which is our service design. And I want to set, just on the theme of what we just spoke about, I want to set the intention around how we can deliver best in class for things. And let's do a little exercise. The exercise is, I want you to hold in your head the number that you currently charge for your services. Hold that number in your head right now. And now I want you to double it and tell me, what is it that you would change in your business that you do right now in order to be worth value of twice of what you charge? And it might be that you don't change anything, or it might be that you get slightly more education. It might be that you change around your day a little bit. It might be that you get a booking system. Write that down. That's for double what you charge right now. And this is just part of an exercise to think about, like, where are we headed to with best in class if we're doing our blue skies approach. One person I spoke to that was given this exercise to do, they said, you know what, I would provide fruit after the session because I think food is fuel and I want to fuel my athletes. And I said, oh, how much would that cost? And he said, maybe $1. And then he suddenly said, you know what, I'm going to do that. And so that was like a quick improvement that he had on his business, that he thought, this is creating that really nice customer journey. But on paper, it doesn't actually cost that much money to do. And it really creates that memorable thing that people want to talk about. Because when we talk about, is something remarkable? Remarkable means, is it worth making a remark about? And the only way that we create something that's worth making a remark about is if it's something that benefits the person that's sharing it by sharing it with someone else. So for example, if the person in the tea room is asking them about just their day or their weekend or whatever, and now they have been able to do a walking handstand because they do CrossFit and that's what their coach got them to do. That is how your brand message will spread, because it was of benefit for that person to be able to have a humble brag about, I'm able to do this now. So we're thinking about the remarkable things that's in other people's best interest to share. And perhaps having a piece of fruit right after they finish their sessions so that they're fueled for the day and you've educated them about how that affects your recovery, having enough nutrition after the session. This is something that now people are able to talk about. And now the final part of this in our uncommon service, unreasonable hospitality, and in our exercise we're doing to create the best service, think about that number again that you charge, and now think about 10 times the amount. And in 10 times the amount, write down what you would do to create that level of value with the person. I'm just saying that if you have been consistently doing this planning system every 3 months in your business and you continue going towards your North Star, you'll eventually get to a point where you said, actually, my service is worth 10 times what people are paying. And that's the type of service that we're looking for, okay? So write down anything that you think would make it worth 10 times the amount. Perhaps you give people like a head massage on the way in. Maybe you think the type of person that would be into paying 10 times the amount are just a busy person, so you would have a protein shake for them afterwards. Or it might be like Singapore. I'm not sure if you've been to Singapore gyms, but quite a number of the big box gyms, they give you your workout gear when you come in. And I only found this out because I went to a workout and I brought my own workout gear. And everybody in the gym was wearing the same outfit. And I thought it was a uniform. And I thought, oh, this is nice. It's like a staff working out day. But it turns out you you get your workout gear on the way in, you wear it, and then you just put it in the laundry like towels. Okay. So maybe, because you've got busy professionals that are coming straight from a meeting and they can't bring a gym bag with them, you've got workout gear that just gets cleaned. Maybe that's something that's 10 times the amount. Write that down right now. The reason that we're doing this simply is because there's different types of fitness professional, gym, or business for everybody. And it's about getting to the point where you say, what I'm providing is worth 10 times the amount, but really honing in on what is it that I do so well that absolutely no one can replicate. And there will be people out there that they are the type of PT that are in the park that are just yelling to people, run, or puppies, right? That kind of boots camp style approach. But how are you differentiating what you're doing so that the unknowing person, the uneducated person when it comes to fitness services, okay, which is potentially all of your new clients, how are you effectively going out of your way to make sure people know what the difference is between these types of services? Okay. Are you the type of one that yells run in the park? Because the fitness industry is for every person, every client, but also every type of PT that's out there. Okay. That said, let's open up on service design and let's list the current services that you offer in 3.1 there in your workbook, and write down a service audit. Write down your service economics, how much you make, the energy cost, and whether people can understand it. And the reason we're doing this is because when we're thinking about the things that we offer, quite often we can end up in situations where we're providing something that literally we don't want to provide anymore. Just because you're qualified to write nutrition, for example, you might find that people that you used to write nutrition plans for were bodybuilders. So writing nutrition plans, people would say, okay, that's what I'll do. And they're just going to follow it. But then in opening this to the wider public, you now have that type of person who's like, I can't eat the same thing one time a week and repeat it. No. And then before they've even paid you, they say that they need it to be a monthly one. And they're like, I can't believe you think that I want to eat the same thing once a month. And you think to yourself, what is this person currently eating? Because I'm sure they're probably ordering the same takeout every night from like 2 different takeout stores. Okay. So that said, you may have some things that you provide, such as nutrition, if you're qualified to do that you go, it's not worth it anymore and it's doing my head in, or I need to refine it so that it's more got boundaries around it, where I'm saying I provide a template for what people will eat instead of this is your meal plan. So write that down in your current services. Write down if there's any areas that you're like, I need to remove this in the 3.2, whether you're going to keep it, whether you're going to fix it. Maybe you're going to keep it around, but you're going to say, it's only going to be guidelines that I write for people, okay? And so when we're doing this, the reason that we want to do that is if we have a foot in each camp, for example, if you really want to focus on your online business, but you're running in-person classes in the morning and in the evening, but these classes are actually impacting your quality of life because you take all of your other online check-ins at nighttime and the early morning class is actually stopping you from getting full sleep, it's worth giving a star, giving a kind of black mark to the areas that you want to fix, where you're going, this is where I'm at for now, but maybe I'm going to remove that early morning class and maybe put one in the evening beside the other one, but just get rid of all of the morning classes so that I have better quality of life. That's why we want to do this, because otherwise, if we're not prospectively doing this, we end up falling to these systems that we've created for ourselves unintentionally. So that is section 3. Now in the section 3, I've got a few contrarian views, okay? And contrarian views, it's important to listen to people who have a different view from you, because sometimes it helps us understand our own perspective, even if it stays contrarian better. Or on top of that, it helps to understand different people's perspectives, okay? So we agree we can still be friends after these contrarian views that I'm going to give you, okay? Great. The contrarian view is, I don't think that it's actually ethical to have 60-minute sessions. Yet there I said it, okay? Listen to me. If I told you kilos that you want to lose in 5 weeks, or I could get you to lose the 5 kilos that you want to lose in 30 weeks, which one would you prefer? You'd probably want the shorter one. You want your results sooner, okay? But as someone who's getting paid by how long you stick around with me, it would be in my interest if you stuck around for longer. Meaning it's probably unethical if I'm selling by the minute, okay? The reason I say that is when I was creating my business from scratch again, I realized that without ever questioning it, I was creating 60-minute sessions. But I found that people that were doing rehab, and I was assisting them with the rehab, they needed much less time, especially if they started from a lower baseline of fitness. And on top of that, even the fittest people, by the time they got to about the 45-minute mark, they're onto their ancillary exercises and accessory exercises. But the amount of intensity in their session is going down quite a lot. And if you look at workout nutrition, it's about the 45-minute to 50-minute mark, depending on baseline training, etc., that you start to need intra-workout nutrition. Are you with me so far? So that means that by selling a 60-minute session, the client is getting less from that last 15 minutes than what they got in each of the minutes that are happening before that. And so as a result of that, I said to my clients, I pitched to them, I said, if I could get you, because of all of my education and training that I've done now, if I could get you the same results that you're getting right now, instead of in an hour and 45 minutes, how would you feel about that? And without exception, every single one of them said to me, well, that would be great. Then I could get home quicker. I could get, dinner underway. I could be able to do more things. I could pick this person up from sport, whatever. And so I changed it, and I actually kept the price the same. And everybody was happy with it because from a duty of care perspective, I'm telling you, because of that framing that I created where I've had enough experience and I've had enough training that I can actually get you the same amount of results in less time. They were happy to pay the amount for 60 minutes because they're paying for the outcome. They're not paying for how much time that they spend with me. And the mistake that we make as personal trainers is we overvalue the most limited resource we have, which oftentimes is time, okay? And on top of that, we also underestimate how skilled, because we wouldn't pay much for fitness because we know it. We don't value it as much. Whereas the stuff that we're doing is actually quite advanced stuff. So that's my contrarian view. And for those who are looking at going about changing your sessions, if you're doing 60-minute sessions, taking it down to 45-minute sessions, remember to frame it the right way. That's my duty of care. Frame it the right way with your clients. But on top of that, I just got you, like a 25% pay increase just from you attending that session. So you're welcome. My second contrarian view that I have for you, okay, is I want to talk to you about positioning. So when we're positioning the service design that we do, we are not the services that we provide. What I mean by that is if you determine yourself not by the outcomes, but by the demographics of the people you serve or the services you provide, you're actually diminishing your total addressable market, your TAM, that's the people that could potentially come to you for business, but also reducing your business opportunities as a result. Here are some examples of that. So I often see people online, and we've all sat the same workshop that's going, you should put in your Instagram bio that a really specific outcome, such as I help dads in their 40s that are businessmen get a six pack. Okay. That works if you are on the back end of your advertising system. It works on the back end if you're describing to your staff who you're looking for. On the front end, you're not helping that person because I'm cool. What if I want to come and train with you? I've just realized that I'm not a dad. I'm not over 40. I don't have kids. I'm not a businessman and I don't really want to have a six pack. So turns out I'm not your ideal client, but most of the PTs I talk to and most of the fitness centers I talk to will not actually turn someone away that don't meet the criteria that they're putting out to the world. Exception being, if you're a women-only gym, you probably should say that, okay? But what I'm saying is marketing experts will sell you that you need to be working on your avatar. Your avatar is only a tool. The tool is to help you think with the hat on of the person that you're trying to reach, okay? And so when we're thinking of the person that we're trying to reach, yes, we probably need to think about the attributes that that person has, the language that person speaks, and where they usually hang out. But that's supposed to be a tool to get you to those clients. It's not supposed to be a self-limiting tool to put out into the world. So that's my contrarian view. I think if instead you put out the language that appeals to that type of person, you'll be able to reach more people and have a better outcome in terms of who you're selling to. Think about Coca-Cola. Do you know what their slogan is? Open happiness, okay? They're not saying we are only for teenagers that sit on a Tuesday on the beach. That's probably maybe what they put in their advertising on the back end to say we want to reach teenagers on a beach. That's their prerogative, but it's a lot more of an approachable slogan to say open happiness. Maybe that doesn't appeal to people. There was a gym that I used to work in Dunedin called World Gym, and it was called the Friendly Gym. Okay? Calling it the Friendly Gym, I don't know what it's saying about other places, whether other gyms are unfriendly, whatever. But that certainly reaches a certain type of customer that is like, I want to go to a place that doesn't feel intimidating. And the type of customer that is a CrossFit aficionado is probably like, I don't want people to be friendly to me. I actually want to like yell in my workouts, whatever. Those are very broad stereotypes. But with these two different types of people can self-disqualify not by demographics such as age, etc., but by psychographics. It's psychographics that we're looking for. Two contrarian views there for you. I hope that's useful. Now, in service design, this is where I want to talk to you about a couple of different definitions that is going to help you with scaling. I hope that's okay. I found that a lot of people that I worked with in the workshop currently don't offer, when they look at their services that you've just filled in section 3, they currently don't offer what I would describe as semi-private training, which is a form of scaling, okay? And in order to talk about that, let's discuss the different types of training that there are and the definitions that I have for them. So we're going to start over here on this side of the screen. This side of the screen, group fitness. Group fitness, big groups of people, usually one, sometimes more trainers training them. They're all doing the same thing, or it's asynchronous, but by the end of the class, everybody has done the same thing. Okay, that's group fitness. Group fitness is not personal training for a lot of people. It's a completely different skill set, okay? I saw that on the internet the other week and it triggered me, so I just had to tell you. Now, the next step along from that, I would say, is small group. Definition of small group is you have a group of people in the session. It's a smaller number of people and usually have one trainer that's training them. It's a more personalized experience, but it's not personal training. And oftentimes, we're seeing when it comes to recessions, the example that people are using is they're using this small group training as a form of scaling their business, where they say, if you can't afford a one-on-one session anymore, you can share the session with your friends. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but that's what I call small group. We're going to jump ahead to one-on-one training just here. I know everybody knows what one-on-one training is. One person, one client, you're taking them through their personalized session. The semi-private training definition, which is right here that I want to talk about, is where everybody in the session is following their own program. They're not doing the same just in the small group. They're not doing the same as each other, and they're not doing a circuit. They are doing their own program that's personalized to them, and there's one coach, and the coach is overviewing what they're doing. So they're still getting coaching. Don't be triggered by that just at the moment, but these are my definitions. Let me frame where semi-private comes into the equation. Ready? When people come to me for one-on-one training, I say to them, my goal is to be the last trainer you ever need. I don't want you to be reliant on a personal trainer for the rest of your life. When you start training with me, I'm going to train you so that it will be an option if you want to continue training with me. We're going to get you to the point that you could go train yourself in the gym and you'd be happy doing that. Okay? Because I say to them, I'm like, I don't want to be training you when I'm like 100. Like, this is not my long-term goal. Okay? And so with that basis, they come to me, they start one-on-one training. And when people start one-on-one training, let's do a little bar graph. The amount of time and effort that they need in a session is like way up here, okay? Accountability, you even need to describe what a barbell is, what a dumbbell is. You need to be telling the person how to go up the weights across the sets. And you need to be explaining to them recovery. And you need to explain to them how to put the weights down and not squeeze your finger, how to adjust the height of the seat, all of that sort of stuff, right? Everybody would agree that that's kind of how someone starts in personal training if they haven't done a bit of personal training before. Or it might be that they just haven't done it your way before, okay? That's where they start. Over time, they need a little bit less of that. It's going down, it's going down, it's going down. They don't get less from you from the session, but they do get less in terms of needing that accountability and all of that description that's happening way up here, okay? So over time, when they get down to here, they are coming to you more for that advice, that long-term commitment, maybe getting some more coaching for like, how do I periodize my recovery, okay? So more high-level advice. How do I fit this into my life? And so arguably, when you started off, you were actually getting more value than what you're getting right here. Okay, more value up here when you started than when, you've been training with the person for a while. And this person right here can train by themselves. Okay, it's at this point down here that in the client journey, I put them onto semi-private, as I would describe it, where they still get their own program, but they're in a session with other people. Why it's more valuable is because you get more help from the community, from each other. If I tell you you're looking lean, of course you're going to tell me that. Yeah, like I'm paying you, okay? But if you get someone else in the session that's like, oh God, you've got so strong, you believe that more, you trust it more because that's coming from someone else in the session. And so I found that was a really good step in the customer journey to getting them to that autonomous kind of like, it's a choice if you want to keep training with me, or you can go and train by yourself in the gym. This is like that next step. They don't have to have help to set up their bars. So that is where I bring in that semi-private training. So that is a way that you can scale your business really well. But like I said, it's when the person has that level of autonomy in a session, it's not right at the start. So that's one thing. Now, when I mention that small group training, I want to give you some tips on small group training. So we're talking about semi-private before. talking about small group training, in small group training, I've noticed that people, because of recessions, are saying, hey, you can bring your friends and just share the price of the session. If you're allowing people to do that, and that's your own prerogative, I've got some rules that I use that I'd like to share with you. In order to keep it distinct from being a semi-private session, in a small group session, they're all doing the same program. Reason being, you are getting the same price. You can't be writing 3 programs, having 3 times as much work. So everybody does the same program. Also, I nominate one person in charge of the group, and I say, you're the only person that's allowed to contact me about scheduling changes, changing the schedule. You have to get agreement from everybody, and you're the one source of truth for me, and I do not get messages from other people from that. Also, that's the one person that's in charge of the money. Like, I will get the full amount from that person, and they've got to chase it up with other people. Otherwise, you've got 3 times as much work chasing the payment. You've got 3 times as much work, or potentially even more work, because you've got people that no-show, don't communicate with you, or you get one person from the group that's tried to change the session without discussing it with anyone else. So in order to keep a really well-oiled machine for you 3-in-1, those are my 3 tips. Everybody doing exactly the same session, one person in charge of the scheduling changes with you, and the third one is one person is in charge of getting you the money, okay? You don't have to employ that, but I'm just saying it's a different product if you're dealing with each person individually. That's just the point that I come to from it, okay? Now, the real order that we create in our life with the services, because we've now filled in 1, 2, and 3 in our sections of our workbook, is our life, our week, our services, and our clients. Because if we're not fitting our own oxygen mask first, then we're not setting up our week properly, then our services suffer, and then we're not able to help our clients as much. So set it up that you can still have, the pick up the kids at 2 p.m., whatever you need to do. Think about what you want to make your week look like. And what your week looks like is literally what your business model is, regardless of whether you went in purposely designing it or not, which is why we are doing this right now. Thinking about recovery time for yourself, maximum coaching hours, total working hours. And hey, I do want to flag something. If you've got a lot going on in your family, maybe your wife is about to give birth, or maybe you're caring for an elderly family member, you will not have as much of a truly week limit. It won't be as high as it would be if you're single, you've got not much work or life stress going on at the same time. So bear in mind that it can change each 3 months, or it can change at a moment's notice. Okay? And any gaps that you have in your schedule are a design issue. And it can be that you need to employ some of these scaling techniques. If you've got too many people all wanting the same session and you've got a big gap in the day, lean into that a little bit, provided the clients have the right amount of autonomous and training. Okay, so just going over what has been in section 1, 2, and 3 is your service clarity. When people don't understand what you offer, if there's too many variations, too much explanation required, that's where you can create content. And clarity helps improve your sales and retention. Our next place that we're coming to is we're going to start prescription-based selling. Okay? And in prescription-based selling, we need to have this information already written down that we've put in section 3 on our service design about what we're carrying forwards, what has the greatest scalability, the least energy cost for us, and potentially has a good revenue per hour. And not all of the revenue per hour will be the absolute highest. Remember, I said we do not define ourselves by what we provide. So we do not define ourselves as a one-on-one in-person PT. Now, the reason I say that is because for myself, I've had a number of opportunities that have found me as a result of me not stereotyping myself as being a one-on-one in-person personal trainer, for example. During COVID, a number of people in Melbourne found that their kids were learning in their rooms for 2 years. It's a long time. I don't want to say that it's a competition about how long we were in lockdown for, but we were in lockdown for a very long time. Melbourne got the longest time in the world. That's where my studio was. And within that, there was a lot of kids that didn't do PE for like 2 years. So as a result, understandably, the parents were like, how can we work on some of like the cross body patternings that can help these kids longer term with exercise, with being able to be more dexterous for sport. And so they came to me with a pitch that they were creating kids classes and they were wondering whether I could run them. And they were the ones that decided to, again, organize all of the money for it so that I got paid a minimum amount for each session, a maximum amount of the number of kids that were allowed in each session. And I actually thought that I wouldn't take kids classes again after I took 2 to 5 year olds for kids Zoomatomic, because I often thought to myself, what are these kids actually getting from it? You know, sometimes they're not in the mood when they're 2 to 5 year olds. They're just lying on the floor, and you usually have the parents around and you're just thinking, oh, is this parent going to think that this was like a real waste of money? I've since learned a lot more about training kids, but I just go back mentally to those days. But further on, after COVID finished, I saw there was a real need to be able to help these kids. And the kids' classes turned out to be super popular. The kids really enjoyed them. It provided a lot for them. And because my mantra or my business service design is called Activity and Health for All, I wasn't saying I train men who are 40 years old and above that are business owners and etc. I was saying I provide activity and health for all, so people knew that was on brand for me. So that provided that opportunity for them to be able to ask me, and at least I could say no. I didn't though. It was lots of fun. So when it comes to prescription-based selling, which is going to be our next area that we move on to, transition to selling, we need to create a very simple offer and understand what it is that we do. That's section 1, 2, and 3. We're going to talk about my secret sauce for selling. And remember, I said we're building relationship businesses, not transactional businesses. So prescription-based selling, I haven't seen anyone else do in the way that I say do it. It's very effective, but it's also very ethical. And that's what I stand by. And the background to prescription-based selling is we are the expert in fitness. And so when we're the expert in fitness and we've got someone coming towards us saying, I want to get fit, when the person is left to choose what's the best way to get fit, they have no idea. They're not a fitness professional. So we ethically should be helping to guide the person from the experience we have and what we see with the person. And so when we're selling, it should be, instead of what do you want, here's the menu, this is what you need. And that's what we can create from a prescription-based selling model. And that's what we have in section 4. So if you quickly want to give yourself an audit in section 4.1 and say, what is my current approach? What do I do for my clients? Do I recommend a plan? Do I adjust after discussion, etc.? Write that down now. And let's discuss the order in which I usually do this. So most people will do a movement screen. And my movement screen, I'm really proud of. I've developed it over the last 20 years. That's something that I can teach you in another module. And I do teach it as part of the AHA model. But when we create that movement screen and the person has already reached out to us and said, hey, I want to lose 50 kilos, whatever, then we create that movement screen. The next part of that, I get the person after I've done the movement screen and write up again what the person has told me that they want to achieve. Now, usually the person tells you that they want to lose 50 kilos, okay? or whatever it is. They will tell you a line that is acceptable to say in a tea room at work that doesn't really invite more conversation or questions. But it's worth digging right in there and going, what is it that 50 kilos means to the person? And so when I do that, it means that I've got that opportunity to be able to say, what does 50 kilos mean to you? That's a very specific amount. You didn't just wake up one day and all of a sudden you're 50 kilos heavier and you're like, wait, what happened, right? And so, for example, I had a client that when they came to me, they wanted to lose a whole bunch of weight. And when it came down to it, it turns out that their daughter had started running across the road, a young daughter, and they tried to catch the daughter, but they always thought adults were able to catch kids just because they're adults, but they weren't able to. And so this person was like, I need to get fit enough because it's not about me anymore. It's about the safety of my daughter. Okay. And so finding the real why underneath that then allows you the opportunity to be able to help the person better. So now we're writing that down on the whiteboard, whatever. And then we go back to, after we've written that down, we're going to go back to writing down what we saw on the movement screen. What was actually there that you're like, we need to address this. So say the person's like, hey, I used to also enjoy deadlifts. And you just notice that they have a little bit of issue. Maybe they're a little bit asymmetrical when they're squatting. They sort of have a hip shift, whatever. That's now an opportunity for you to be able to go, hey, I know that you said you wanted to do the deadlifts, but I'm not going to get you doing any deadlifts until we address this one specific area. Say it's ankle mobility on one side, or maybe it's simply like mobility on the, like on one of the sides of the hips, whatever, or it's something to do with scoliosis, something that they need to work on. You write down the thing that they need to work on and why. Now you're actually in real time problem solving for them, showing that you're not that trainer in the park that just yells, run, okay? From there, writing down all of the things that you're going to need to do to adapt their program. The next step after that, you say, so in order to do this, and you're here, and this is your goal, I'm going to say, at least for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever, I'm going to need you to commit to 3 times a week with me for 6 weeks. And then we can reassess based on your progress. Because the thing is, from a duty of care perspective and from an ethical perspective, if you've got someone who said they want to lose 50 kilos and they don't move that well, and they also haven't trained in a long time, and they don't know how to move the way they need to move in a gym, them doing 1 session a week is actually not going to help them get to their goal very fast. So in you allowing the person to do that, you're not giving them, like, it's not in their best interest. So I usually give the person my number 1 option, which is like, this is going to get you there. And then I give them a lesser budgetary option for if there's a time or a budgetary component. And I say, this is also going to get you there, which is not as fast. Okay. And these are your 2 options. Which one would you like? I've only had one person that told me that they didn't think this worked. And that's because they weren't doing each of the steps that I told you. So make sure, movement screen, make sure you go back to what the real reason is, not what they just what they said, why they came into you today. That's why I like the activity and health for all method, because it's like, aha, when did you have that aha moment where you said, oh, today I need to get fit? Movement screen, find out why they got that aha moment. Then what is it they need to do in real time changed based on what you saw on the movement screen? Then what is actually going to get them there based on your knowledge? Prescription-based selling, and allow them to pick one of the 2. Okay? Prescription-based selling. Stop the recording now and go right now onto your section 4 and write down for you how you'll address a client with a fat loss goal a strength goal, a rehab goal, handling pushback, and reflection. Write that down now in section 4, pause, and then come back again. Now, we are heading on to section 5, which is a client retention section. And the reason that we're going to move on to that right now is because keeping a client for a long time means that we're actually able to make choices for our business. We're able to be financially more successful. We don't have to keep recruiting more people for the people left, okay? Your business can continue to flourish. We had an awesome retention rate, over 90%, in fact, probably over 95%. And it's really hard to measure for us because whatever it was, the reason that the person had to leave was, when whatever got resolved, they would come back again. So I still have people coming back to me 10 years later that are like, I saw that you offer online services and I'm on the other side of the world. We could train together again. And I'm like, yeah, we could. So I'm constantly getting people coming back to me, even asking for advice for someone in their area that I can train them because they trust me. And so this is how, when you have a really good client retention system, you're setting yourself up for life. This is a big investment in yourself and your business. So working on retention audit, score yourself on your clarity, your progress, connection, consistency for your current clients, and what areas are the weakest. And the reason we're scoring ourselves on this is, and I'm talking about for consistency, are people coming each week? And are they canceling multiple weeks in a row? So it's like 1 out of 4 weeks that you're seeing them, okay? If that's the case, what sort of percentage of people are doing that? The reason that we're doing this is because these are areas where a person will drop off. So writing that down, and under the clarity, the score that you give yourself, looking up at the slides right now, why clients undershoot is because without guidance for selecting the sessions that they're doing, the number of sessions per week, is they usually optimize for their own time, for their own cost, and their own convenience, not for outcomes. So if we are not constantly telling the person, hey, this works for now, but then, because we keep getting fitter, we probably need to do a little bit more weight, or we need to do a little bit more time or duration or whatever, or intensity. The person doesn't know what they don't know. You are responsible for letting them know this. And for example, I had a person that I shared with them, here's 20 minutes that you can do to help rehab your hips. And so 20 minutes, I just need you to do that 3 times a week. And after 1 week, there's already improvement. And I overheard this person sharing, not my client, but I did this as a nicety, overheard this person sharing that they thought that other people wasted their time in the gym because they got all of the results for just 20 minutes. And I was just thinking, I usually always frame this. Why didn't I frame it that this will work? Something is better than nothing, but actually we're going to get to a more optimal level if we do a few more sessions a week. So that's it. Make sure that you're actually helping to guide your client and you're guiding them on the frequency as well as the intensity. Explain why, assess your client, recommend what you believe is appropriate, explain why, and adjust as needed. So you've already got down in your client retention, currently where clients are at and where it's lowest, and you're scoring yourself based on your prescription-based selling that you've used in the past, not where you want to be, but we know where we want to go now. And we're going to think more towards what our client journey is going to look like. And that's in our client journey mapping. Most people think that they're doing this well, but I'm going to give you stuff that absolutely 0% of people that I have come across are actually doing these things. So 5.3 on the workbook, we're talking about client journey mapping. Pause right here, the recording, and go ahead and write down your first contact, your first session, first month, and ongoing experience, okay? And then come back again. So in our first contact starts when the person gets in contact with you. When the person gets in contact with you, how typically do they do that? I'm hoping you have a website, but if you do not have a website, at the very least, you should have a Google My Business. And if you don't have a Google My Business, promise me right now, you're going to write down in the margin there that you're going to go and make one, because this is how people find your business. They write down on Google, personal trainer near me, best gym near me, right? It's a free service to have a Google My Business. You can put reviews on there. Clients can review your services. But this is how people find you. They can click that call button. Great. So in the first contact, they get in contact with you. We used to have about 10 leads a week without advertising. We never advertised. We had about 10 leads a week that would come through the website. Great. Okay. And then we would qualify them. But guess what time they usually contact us? On like a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, because that's when they had most time with their own thoughts, and also were, getting changed, getting ready, wearing stuff that is usually not stretchy. Okay. So people would reach out then. At that point, we had a automation set up that we could reply to the person, and the person could get a link and it said, like, you've contacted outside of our business hours, but here's a link to book in with us. And so they could book their first session to do their movement screen. The reason that's really successful is because the person wants to close the loop and they need the answer now. So if you have that, and even if you're not tech savvy and you don't yet have a website, put your out of office on and have a link to be able to book in with you. Because the first person that gets in contact with this client is the one that will win the client. Secret sauce. That's the one that's going to win the client. Okay. And I made friends with the other studios and personal trainers in the area, because if someone wasn't right for us, wasn't our ideal client, we would pass those leads on to the other gyms because they're not right for our group, for our energy, protecting our energy. So we would make sure that we would help qualify that person based on that movement screen and get them to the right place that's going to be like perfect for them, especially if they weren't right for us. In the first contact that we had with the person, they would share, what goals that they had, because we'd ring them and say, we're looking forward to seeing you in. But here's something that people don't do. When the person was going to come for their movement screen, we wrote them a text message that said, we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Then we'd have a link to the address, Google. So you just press it, because everybody starts getting freaked out and they're like, where is this place? I don't care if you're in a big box gym, okay? I do not care, because the thing is, you're assuming that the person regularly comes to the gym, and the thing is, that's probably not the case if they're reaching out to a personal trainer. So it does not matter if you assume the person knows where you are. Send them a Google link anyway, okay? It doesn't matter if they've been there once before already. Maybe they're not coming from their home this time. Maybe they're coming from work. Give them a link to your address. Also, write your name, because they probably haven't saved you in their phone because you're not that special yet. Also, describe yourself and where you're going to be. There's nothing more unsettling for that person coming in if they introduce themselves to your mailman because they think it's you. And there's not another opportunity to have that first impression. And if the person feels that uncomfortable kind of anxiety or anxiousness because they just introduced themselves to the wrong person, or your client that was just leaving before, then that's going to spill over into your movement screen, and they're going to think, this person gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't want to train with them. Okay. I've got purple hair at the moment. I say I'm the girl with purple hair. I will see you out the front. Like, I make sure that I'm out the front so they can't interact accidentally with other people on the way in. But also, if they get freaked out and they're sitting in their car for a little bit, they can actually see me from their car. That's what I'll do. And I'll write that all in the first text message. Put in the comments if you actually already do that, because we haven't come across anybody who's done all of those things in the first text message. If you're not doing that, do it already. In the first month, make sure you're introducing your client to other clients, okay? Give them the opportunity to enjoy being with you. And on top of that, even if it's not their first session, even if they've been with you for a year, in the session, remind them how what you're doing with them relates to the goals that they had when they first came to you. It doesn't matter if you said it until you're blue in the face. It's important to let the client know how lunge relates to going on a hike. They just need to know it. Make sure as well in their ongoing experience, you provide opportunities for them to continue enjoying the experience. And that could be through saying, do you have any friends that want to train here? I've got a couple of extra slots that have opened up. And give them the opportunity to write you a Google review on that Google My Business that you said you had. Because now you have an opportunity for more people out there to find you. Okay? So write that down in ongoing experience. And the way I do Google reviews is I say, you came to me and you had an issue, with your back, and you found it hard to get an expert that could help you with your back. So perhaps we could look at how do we have other people find me, and they'll find me by being able to read, I had a sore back and this happened. Like having that related story, and new clients do actually read all of your reviews as well. So allowing that person to share that story helps to reconfirm to them why they trained with you. But on top of that, it's helping you get new clients at the same time. Good stuff, right? Okay, so a common mistake to improve retention is give people more variety, more clients, more content. But in fact, structure of your sessions is the most important. When you're more predictable, such as you've got the same warm-up when the person comes, you've got the same way of cooling down, you've got the same system of dropping them off at the staircase if they go down the stairs in order to get to the changing rooms. Create that structure so the client feels like this is the start of the session, this is the end of the session. Okay, great news. Moving on to section 6. We're going to talk about operations and AI. So if you could write down, pause the recording, write down things that you repeat weekly. Maybe it's your marketing emails. Maybe it's text messages where you need to wear your Sandra hat. Maybe it's your onboarding emails that you're sending to clients. And then give yourself an opportunity to go through automation opportunities, which ones that you could automate and which tools that you're currently. Okay, we're back. So from that, we want to look at what opportunities we have that we can automate. And I'm going to be providing as an extra in the comments some prompts that you can use in order to be able to create your marketing emails, your onboarding emails. And if you're not currently using AI, here's an opportunity to have a play with it, because the things that you currently are doing that you have to repeat, that's things that's chewing up your time. Now, I'm not saying that AI needs to take your business. I'm not saying that AI needs to do the work for you, but why not use the dictation feature on AI? And my advice is use the little microphone as opposed to use the in-app talk and the speaking comes back to you. So use that, not the talk to talk feature, but the little microphone, because it has more depth to it. And then use that to record a brain dump of what you need in this email. And then therefore you can get onto having some really nice polished emails that took you less time to create, so you can spend more time focusing on your clients. All right. Section 6, AIs and automation. We can deep dive into this in another module, but we've done just a little bit to give you a little hint of it today. Now, finally, this last section is about boundaries and structure, and have a think, filling in section 7, boundaries and structures, about certain things that are going on in your business at the moment that we've discussed in each of these previous sections that are gaps, are things that you need to look into, such as payment terms, such as scheduling rules, any gaps that you have, and one boundary to fix. And write that down right now. You can pause the recording to do that. And now we're going to get you filling in your 180-day plan as that last section, as that section 8. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because we want you to be able to implement what you sat through today. And I hope maybe you've watched this on 2 times the speed, although I do tend to talk fast at times. But we want to make sure that what you're doing is going to be completely practical and actionable from today's session. So we're creating that depth in a short amount of time so that you're able to get results. So that's in your integration. Now, finally, I would love if you could write in the comments anything that you're changing or implementing as a result of today's session. I'm really pleased that you've taken the opportunity to tune in. I hope you enjoyed your workbook. My designer certainly did an amazing job on making it look great. And let's catch you on the next one. Bye.